Tumal Yerushalayim, one time in the chamber where they kept the wood, they found bones, and they wanted to make a decree that all of Jerusalem was impure because they found bones of a body in this chamber in the temple. So Amad Rabbi Yeshua al-Raglav, Rabbi Yeshua, he stood up on his feet. Rabbi Yeshua was there after the temple, but he was there by the temple as well. He was a Levi. Rabbi Shua ben Chananya, the Gemara says, was a Levi. He was there by the, I forget if he was a singer or he kept the doors. I forget what the Gemara says. V'amar, and he says, Leibusha chlima hilanu, is it not so shameful for us? Shenigzu tuma al yarav yisenu, that we're going to declare the city of our fathers impure. Aye mesi mabel, where are the dead from the flood? Aye mesi Nebuchadnezzar, where are the dead from Nebuchadnezzar? From the destruction of the first temple. Okay, now what does he mean? What he's trying to say is that, of course, this land is pure. What does he mean? Midaka amarachi, from the fact that he used that expression. Lav lemeimar, is it not to say the leihavi, that the Mabel wasn't there? He said, where's the dead of Nebuchadnezzar? Where's the dead of the Mabel? Must be that there was no flood here. So it's a kasha and Rish Lakish. Rish Lakish said the flood was in the land of Israel. Rabbi Yeshua says there's no dead bodies in. The Gemara asks back, according to Rabbi Yochanan, Taimech, Harugi Nebuchadnezzar, Hachinami Deloihavi. You want to say that Nebuchadnezzar didn't kill anyone in Jerusalem in the destruction of the first temple? Of course he did. So Ella, rather, what does it mean? Havi Upaninu. He did kill, and there were dead bodies there. The only thing is they cleaned them out to purify the city. So Hachanami. Here also there was a flood in the land of Israel and in Jerusalem. Havi Upaninu. There were dead bodies there, but they cleared it out. It's not a kasha on Rish Lakish that says that there was no flood. From the fact that Yeshua said, where are the dead bodies? Just like Nebuchadnezzar, they cleaned it. Also by the flood, they had to clean it out. V'ifnu, and if they cleaned it out, although it was cleared from Yerushalayim, from all of Israel, it wasn't cleared, which means that Rish Lakish is correct. There were places outside the land, outside the city of Jerusalem, that were impure. There were dead bodies there. They only cleared Jerusalem. So this was originally a question from Rish Lakish, from Rabbi Yochanan on Rish Lakish. The question was, how can you say that there is no flood in the land of Israel? How can you say that the flood was also in the land of Israel? Rabbi Yeshua said that there were no bodies there. And it turned around being a question on Rabbi Yochanan. Because he said, no. Rish Lakish had such a good response that now he's left with a question on Rabbi Yochanan, that what Rabbi Yeshua actually meant was that there were dead bodies there and it was cleaned. And Rabbi Yochanan said there was no flood there. So the proof that Rabbi Yochanan brought is actually a question on it. So Ikad Amri, there are those that say that this question was posed originally by Rish Lakish. Eis Rish Lakish le Rabbi Yochanan. Aye meise Mabel, aye meise Nebuchadnezzar. Where are the dead of the flood? Where are the dead of Nebuchadnezzar? My love, midahani have, hani nami have. Obviously, just like the dead of Nebuchadnezzar were there, so too the dead of the Mabel were there. And that's a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan that says there was no flood in the land of Israel. The Gemara says, midi area. Do you have to grab it like that? Do you have to say that that's the case? Ha-kadisa va-kadisa. By Nebuchadnezzar they cleaned it, and by the Mabel it was never there. That's not a proof, just because he said both of those things. It doesn't prove Rabbi Yochanan wrong. It could be interpreted that he's saying that the land of, that city of Jerusalem doesn't have dead bodies, for whatever reason, either because there was no flood, or because Nebuchadnezzar, the bodies that were there were removed. Okay, Esrei. What do we have here? Let's see where this aleph is. Esrei Rish Lakish le Rabbi Yochanan. Okay. Everything that was on the dry land died. Rish Lakish says, it works out well according to me. That I say that the flood came to the land of Israel. That's why everyone on the dry land died. It says everyone died. See, what's going to happen here is, if there was no flood in the land of Israel, then what's this whole thing that everyone died and God said He's going to start over from Noach, and so what about the people in the land of Israel? So Rish Lakish says, I have it all worked out. The flood was in the land of Israel, right? According to you, what does it mean that everyone on the dry land died? They didn't die. There was no flood there. Mishum havla, because of the heat, because of the air. Like Rav Chisda says, Rav Chisda says that the sin of the people before the flood was because of heat, referring to the semen that was used inappropriately, and the corruption of the animals and before the flood, and so therefore they were judged with heat as well. The water was boiling water, and they died because the people died, according to Rabbi Yochanan, in the land of Israel because of the steam from everywhere else. It says over here the water settled, and it says the anger of the king settled, and it uses the same word. So that's showing that the heat that was cooled. Ikadamri, there are those that say Isra, Rabbi Yochanan, Rish Lakish. Take advantage. This is the only page of stories in the whole Zevachim. The rest of Zevachim is very dry. The slaughtering here and the thing, it's all laws. They have some. It's called Agadita. This is a. So Rabbi Yochanan says to Rish Lakish, Mikol Shebacharav Hamesu, everything that was in the dry land died. Bishleim Lididi, according to me, that I say. It says everything that was on the dry land died. According to me, it makes sense. It was dry land. There was no flood there. That's why it's called dry land. It's good proof, right? According to you, what does it mean, dry land? It was all wet. The flood. It's a question of Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish. Umar says no. Charava shaisim ikara was dry land before the flood. It means that we used to be the dry land. But my karle charava. Why is it called the dry land? Rav Chisda wants to tell us, like Rav Chisda says. Rav Chisda says that in the days of the flood, in the time of the flood, the generation of the flood, the decree was not on the fish. Only the things on the dry land died, but not the fish in the sea. We have the original fish. When we eat fish, the Kabbalists make a big deal about the fish. It's because it's the original fish that was there from before the flood. It was from the Gan Eden days. It works out well according to the one that says La Yared Mabel Eretz Yisrael, that the flood did not come into Eretz Yisrael. Hainu the Kamrima Hasam. Okay, there's a very large animal, and the question is, where did it go during the flood? So if the flood didn't go to Eretz Yisrael, so this re'im, it's a large animal. I don't know how it's translated. Maybe in the article, do you have a translation for it? Rima, re'im, I don't know. Dinosaur.
Students around.
Okay, whatever. Don't worry about it.
It says it's mentioned. It doesn't say.
Okay, so this is a very large animal. So the assumption is that it wouldn't fit in the teva.
Not a fish then.
Not a fish. No, it's a large animal. But the thing, like, how did you get this to survive? Where did you put it? So, the Ibn Ezra says that they had more than one boat. Noach had several boats because to fit all the animals. And the Ramban says, what? Why do you have to say that? The whole thing is a miracle. You don't have to say that. Right? In Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer, the Radal, Reb David Loria, was a student of the Gra or something. He says that they had just the original species, and after all the differences that we have now is because of evolution. But there's not a real evolution in 5,000 years. It's not like new species and all of that. There's eyebrows, little things, fingernails.
Like the two mountains. What's their names? There's a convert people.
Ararat? Where?
Yeah, there are people that converted, and they hold. We don't recognize as Jews, I believe, but they hold that there was no flood there.
By this Ararat?
Right.
Where is it? Is it in like Turkey or something?
I think. Yeah.
In Turkey?
Isn't that where they said they found the ark over
Yeah.
No, not by that mountain. The two mountains when we went before entering the land.
Oh, Har Grizim and Har Eval.
Yeah.
Oh, so the Samaritans, the
Samaritan,
Shomronim, yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
They hold. We don't recognize them, right? Because they're still now.
They have, yeah, they're still
They're
around.
still there.
Yeah.
They hold there was no flood by then.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Yeah, the Samaritan Bible is they have it's very similar, but there's also the differences. Okay. So according to Rabbi Yochanan, it makes sense. The Re'im stayed over there. Elamandam Yard Rima. But according to Rish Lakish, where did the Re'im go? Heichakam, where did it go? Rabbi Yanai, Guru Yisichnisu B'Teva. It's not a problem. They brought in young animals like this into the Teva. When they were young, they were very small. Rabbi Bar Bachana says, I saw one of these reims, and it was as large as Mount Tabor. As a child, it was one that was only 1 day old, and it was as large as the mountain. Kamahavi, Har Tabor Kamahavi, Abar Parsia was 40 parsais, 120,000 amas or something. I don't know. It's a huge area. Mishcha de Tzavre, the width of its neck, of its like shoulders, would have been Tlasa Parsi Marabata. No, Tlasa Parsi is 3 parsais. And Marbata de Resha Parso Palga. And the place of its head is a parsa and a half. Rama Kava V'Sachi Yardana. It laid it let out some waste, and the Yarden was dammed, was blocked. That's how large it was. That's an expression that it blocked the Yarden. I guess the Yarden has different areas, but whatever the case is, it was a large animal, even as a child. Now, Rabbi Bar Bachana has these stories, these fantastic stories. In Baba Basra, there's a whole section. It's called the stories of Rabbi Bar Bachana. There's a whole list of them. All of them are like very fantastic. So Amar Rabbi Yochanan, so we're asking, how did this survive the flood? Couldn't have gone into the Teva. Rabbi Yochanan says, it's funny that Rabbi Yochanan is answering, because Rabbi Yochanan was the one that was no flood there. He's answering for Rish Lakish. That Roishai Hechnisa Teva, only its head went into the Teva. He said that the head was a parsa and a half. No, they just put in the edge of its nostrils so that it should be able to breathe. Rabbi Yochanan says he doesn't need to say this because the Mabel didn't go into Eretz Yisrael. He said, no, live Rish Lakish Kamar. He's answering for Rish Lakish, for the other side. He fought fairly. V'kasagya Teva. The Teva was floating. It was going to slip off, I guess. Amar Rish Lakish, Karnav Kasher B'Teva. They tied its horns to the Teva, so it shouldn't slip off, fall in the water. Amar Rav Chizdan Shidar Mabel Breitchen Kelkel Breitchen Nidainu. Rav Chizda says that the waters were boiling hot. L'taimeich Teva Heikas Heichasagya. According to you, that you're asking this question, how did the Teva float? Where it's assuming if the waters are boiling, then the tar that was on it would have melted off. in boiling water. And also Oig Melech HaBashan, we know, survived. How did he survive the heat? It cooled down on the side of the teva. It was a miracle. There's ways of doing it also, but it was a miracle also. It's interesting because if I give my kids a bath and I put like salt, Epsom salt, so if I put in hot water and I add salt, the salt lowers the temperature like
Quick.
very, very quick. Like it all of a sudden, like the whole thing is just cool. So I was thinking if it's associated with when they put salt on the ground that it melts the ice and the snow. I don't know if that's the reason, or just because it's cooler. Maybe just because it's cooler. I don't know what the reason is. But whatever the case is, there was a miracle right around the teva that the waters over there were not boiling. That's what I'm bringing out. Nothing to do with Epsom salts. Okay. Well, Reb Shimon ben Lakish, according to Reb Shimon ben Lakish, Nihinami the yard Mabel Eretz Yisrael v'halei pash. According to Rish Lakish, that says that the Mabel was in Eretz Yisrael, but did it not flow over? Because Eretz Yisrael is higher. Rish Lakish says, Lama nekushma Metzula. Why is the land of Babylonia called Metzula? Shekol Meisi Mabel Nitzdalu Sham. Because the dead of the Mabel, they fell down over there, because when it receded, they would have gone to the lowest place, which that's the Babylonia. Rabbi Yochanan says, why is it called Shinar? Shekol Meisi Mabel Ninarusham. Because the dead of the Mabel were like adjusted over there. The Gemara answers, yes, they flow down, but it's impossible that nothing remained, even if it recedes, but there's still some bones here, some bones there, and that would have stayed in Israel. Amar Rabavo says, Lama Nikr Shema Shinar. Why is the land of Babylonia called Shinar? Sheman Eretz Ashira, because it shakes up the wealthy. But we see that there's wealthy people in Babylonia. It doesn't last for 3 generations. The reason is, Rashi says, because he quotes the Gemara, that they weren't compassionate. They were wealthy, but not compassionate on others. Anyone that eats from the dirt of Bavel, it's like eat dirt. Right? You take from the dirt of Bavel, so it's like he's eating the flesh of his fathers. Now, Tanya Namiyach Kaleichel Miafar Shel Bava Ki Loichel B'Sar Avaysav. It's also taught in a brisa this. Yeshaim Kilo Oichel Shkatzim Uramasim. It's as if he's eating the fossils of the insects that were there. Now, it doesn't actually mean I forget where I saw this. Doesn't really mean he's eating the flesh of his parents, because we come from Noach. Where did I see this? I saw this in the other Gemara. They had like a commentary on the side. It says, we come from Noach, we don't come from the dead of the Mabel. That's not really the fathers. Or maybe it was Rashi somewhere. Do you see it anywhere?
Is that similar to Germany?
Yeah, probably. Okay. But maybe it's in Yud Aleph here. Yeah. Yeah. In the Shita Mekubetzes, he changed it. No, he says it's supposed to say Kilo Eichel Shkatzim Meramasim. That takes out the as if he ate the dead of his the flesh of his fathers. He says because we don't come from, our fathers don't come from the people that died in the Mabel. Okay. Back to the grind. Sarah Mishtalayach, the goat that sent off the cliff. We said that, how do you know, we said in the Mishnah, that how do you know that if someone slaughters this, that he's not going to be chayav outside the temple, We said, how do we know this? We have a verse that it was not brought to the tent of meeting. Only something that was meant to be brought to the tent of meeting, you're guilty. The person that brings it outside the tent of meeting is guilty. However, this was never supposed to be brought to the tent of meeting. It's the goat that's pushed off the cliff. So therefore, if he slaughters it outside the temple incorrectly, he doesn't accrue the punishment of karis. The Gemara asks a contradiction. It says, "Oy karban." This morning when I was learning this, I'm looking for the pasuk "Oy karban," and when I opened up the Chumash, I'm looking. It doesn't say "Oy karban." It's a quote from a brisa that uses the pasuk, the word karban, not "Oy karban." But in the brisa it says "Oy" or karban. Shemei ani afilu kachi bedekabayas. This would tell me even things that are sanctified to the temple treasury. Shenikru karban, those are called karban. Shenemar v'nikra ves karban Hashem, that says in the verse, you will bring the sacrifice of Hashem, which is referring to things that are to the treasury. Talmud leimer al pesach al mayid lehiviyu. Misharei lava b'al mayid yatsu kachi bedekabayas sheinu ruyin. Okay. Quotes a brisa. The brisa says that I could have thought that there were certain things that you would also violate the prohibition of bringing outside the temple if you would sacrifice them outside the temple. Which things are those? I could have thought. Which things are those? Things that were dedicated to the treasury, not actually sacrifices, but animals that were dedicated to the treasury. Where it says no, animals that are dedicated to the treasury are not brought to the tent of meeting to be sacrificed. So therefore, it doesn't include those. So I'm only going to exclude those that go to the treasury, but I'm not going to exclude the goat that's pushed off the cliff. Why? Because that is eligible to be brought to the entrance to the tent of meeting. You're already hearing what the question is. The Mishnah says that we exclude the goat that's pushed off the cliff because it's not included in what should have been brought to the tent of meeting. Comes the Brisa and says, I would have included it because it is included in what should have been brought to the tent of meeting. Talmud leimer Hashem. But the pasuk tells me what's brought sacrifice to God. It's not sacrifice to God, it's pushed off the cliff. So we have the wrong verse. We have another brisa that uses a different verse to exclude it. And actually, the brisa tells me, to make it worse, that it is brought to the tent of meeting. Where it is. Before, the way it works is that you have two sacrifices, two animals, two goats. And it's unclear which one is going to be brought as a sacrifice, which one's going to be pushed off the cliff. And he drew a lot. He picks up this one as to Hashem, and this one is to Azazel. He has to put his hand in a box. He takes out a little card that says on it, Lashem or Azazel. So, we're discussing, at that point, it was in the tent of meeting. Now, it's not definitive which one is going to God and which one is going. So because it wasn't definitive which one is to God, so it says a sacrifice to God, that's the problem if it's sacrificed outside the temple. And this goat that's going to Azazel is not definitive that it was going to God. Could be it was going to Azazel. So therefore it's not included in that prohibition. Whatever the case is, it went to the tent of meeting. It's a question on our Mishnah that says that the reason why, if it's slaughtered outside the temple, the person doesn't accrue the punishment is because only things that were meant to go to the tent of meeting, and this wasn't meant to go to the tent of meeting. The Brisa says differently. The Brisa says this was in the tent of meeting. Okay. Where it says like kasha, it's not a question. The question is what the discussion here is when it was slaughtered. Kan kaidem hagrala, kan lachar hagrala. Before the lottery, this is considered eligible to go to the tent of meeting because could be it would have ended up as a sacrifice. So if someone slaughtered it at that point before the lottery, he would have grabbed it and taken it out of the temple and slaughtered it. So then, what's the reason why it would be exempt? Because of La Hashem. Because it wasn't clear that it was going to God. Could be it was going to Azazel. But Achar Agrala, but after the tent of meeting, after the lottery, then it was not allowed to go to the entrance to the tent of meeting because it's meant to go to Azazel. That would be the exclusion. Gemara asks, Achar Grol Anami Yakavidoi. What do you mean? After the lottery, he still had to do the vidui. He had to say the confession over it. It was an attentive meeting. Elam Ramani like Kasha. Ramani says there's no question. Kan vidui, kan lachar vidui. This is before the confession. After the confession. After the confession, it's not meant to be an attentive meeting, and therefore that verse would exclude it. If it was slaughtered outside, the reason why they wouldn't include the punishment is because it wasn't anyways meant to be at the attentive meeting. But before the confession, I would need the verse that says that to God to tell me that it was exempt. Okay. Hareva Vanyerva. These are two animals that were sodomized. That means a human lived with them, either a male or a female. The Gemara asks that the reason why the Mishnah says that if these are slaughtered, if these were sacrifices, and they were slaughtered outside the temple, that the reason why they're not, he doesn't include the punishment of doing a sacrifice outside the temple is because they're invalid anyway. The verse that tells me this is because it's meant to be brought lifnei Mishkan Hashem, in front of the tabernacle of God. But since these are not eligible to be brought in front of the tabernacle, then he's not chayav if he brings them outside. Why don't we use the verse, entrance to the tent of meeting? Why do you say tabernacle? Why didn't you use the other verse? It's the same verse actually, but it's just the beginning of the pasuk. It says, if we're going to just be discussing these animals that were sodomized, mishkachas la'adak deshinu, it could be that they actually at one point were eligible to go to the tent of meeting. Why? Because originally they were designated, they were sanctified. And then, me'ikara, originally, v'hada ravu, but then a person came along and was sodomized them. And now they're not eligible to be brought to the Mishkan. But you can't say that they weren't eligible to be brought to the tent of meeting. Ela muktzah v'nevhad, but if we're talking about the other animals here, the other animals were animals that were worshipped for idolatry. If you're going to tell me that it was sanctified first and then it was worshipped, once it's sanctified, it doesn't belong to him. If it doesn't belong to him, he can't make it invalid by worshiping, by bowing to it. It's not his. You can't walk outside, bow down to someone's car, and then go and tell the guy that, I'm very sorry, your car is now an idol, you can't have any benefit from it. It's not his. If the person does it to his own, he can make it forbidden. If he makes his own item into an idol, that's fine. He worshipped it; it becomes an idol. But here, if the animal was already sanctified, it doesn't belong to him anymore. It belongs to God, and then he goes ahead and bows down to it. So it doesn't belong to him. So you can't say that first it was eligible to go to the tent of meeting, and that's why we're not using that verse here. So we answer B'kachim Kalim. We're dealing with animals that are of secondary holiness. And what does that tell me? We're going according to Rabbi Yisai Glili that says that Kachim Kalim, the animals of secondary holiness, belong to the owner. They don't belong to God. What is this relevant? The Tanya was taught in a Brisa, Mala Mala Bashem. If someone denies owing something, let's say he owed this animal to another person and he swore falsely, he denied it. So, l'rabis kachim kalim, shehim emayna. He can only if there's certain punishments that come along when someone denies money, but it needs to be money that's owned by him. If it's money that belongs to God, then those things wouldn't apply. So what Rabbi Yisai Glili says is that these animals of secondary holiness, they actually belong to the person, and a false oath regarding them would require him to do the punishment, the guilt offering that goes along with stealing money with an oath. Okay. Hilkach. So therefore, now we'll basically that's the words for basically Hilkach. Therefore, it makes sense. Reva v'nirva, even though it was sanctified before, but davar erva or davar erva. Maybe it's davar erva. I don't know. I don't have the vowels. That it's something that's a sexual sin. So therefore, even though it doesn't belong to him, but nevertheless it becomes invalid as a sacrifice, regardless of who it belongs to. However, muktzah v'nevad, but when it comes to idolatry, an animal that's worshipped or designated for idolatry, avodas kechavim b'kachim kalim. We're talking about that it was worshipped, and it was an animal of secondary holiness. That means it belongs to him. That's why he was able to make it invalid. What about those animals that were exchanged for other animals? If they're not his because they were sanctified, what's it referring to? Or an animal that was born as a cesarean, that means it was born not natural. It's not allowed to be brought as a sacrifice. And that's dealing with that the mother was a sacrifice, and this child was inside the mother. Problem is, we're looking for a sacrifice that at one point was eligible. The problem is that if it's a yotze doifen, if it's born as a cesarean, it was never eligible. So we're trying to figure out that no, it could have been eligible. Why? Because its mother was already sanctified as a sacrifice, and the child, the child only becomes holy after it's born. So or those other things that were exchanged for a dog, or it was exchanged as payment to a woman for sin. So the mother had that status, but the child did not have that status. Until it's born. What are we gaining here? In bloody kedushin b'avyasin hein kedushin. Yeah, what we're gaining is that even though these children were never able to be sacrifices, but because they were eligible when their mother was alive, because the mother had a moment when she could have been the sacrifice, so therefore the verse of being brought to the entrance of the tent of meeting would have been applicable to these animals as well, and when they were an embryo, when they were in the mother. And that's why we need to bring the other verse that says that they can't be brought as sacrifices, not that they weren't brought to the entrance to the tent of meeting. Okay, Bali Mom and Chulu, Oisev Espenai. Now we have a whole list of animals, 3 to be specific, that this machlekes the rabbis and Reb Shimon, if these were brought out